3, 4, 5. Right, good morning everybody, welcome to the Economy and Development Select Committee. It's Tuesday the 7th of September 2021. Welcome to all members and any members of the public who are watching. We'll go first to apologies for absence. And Hazel, do we have any apologies?
We have apologies, Chair, from Councillor Evans and Councillor Feekins.
Right, any declarations of interest from members? Any members with declarations of interest? If not at the moment, declare them when we get to them in the meeting. Okay, understood? Right. Hazel, do we have any public open forum indications? If anybody wants to come and speak? No, right. Well, we'll move to straight on then to agenda item number 4. That's the scrutiny of the Borough Theatre refurbishment proposals. And that's probably going to be taken by Kath Fallon or Dave Baxter. Yes? Dave, you're with us.
I am. I believe Kath was taking it. I can't see Kath, but
no.
So, okay, if you can, I will.
Well, if Kath was meant to be taking it, Hazel, should we move on to the next item and then come back to this item because I see Mark is with us. Mark Hand's with us.
Yes, you could do that, Chair.
Right, okay. Well, Mark, if that suits you, can we proceed to the scrutiny of the proposed regeneration projects and placemaking grant submission? Yeah? You're on site, you're on mute, Mark. You're not now.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
Bear with me a second, Chair.
Yes, we can see
I
you.
had half an hour's grace while Kath was on, so I'm just opening the paper now.
Well, it means you can go home early.
Okay, thanks, members. Hope you had a good summer break. So the paper is just to seek your thoughts and your scrutiny on a couple of proposals. So we're putting forward to Cabinet next week a proposal for our submission to the Welsh Government for the Transforming Towns placemaking grants. So there's a number of categories of different things we can use that funding for. We have a total award of £791,000. So that's 70% Welsh Government funding, 30% MCC match funding, but that's the total pot. And in Appendix 1 to the report, it sets out the sort of the T's and C's of the grant, or the different categories you can bid for, which I thought would be helpful for you to see just to understand the context of the grant. And then in Appendix 2, we've set out our proposed submission. We've also put in what we think is an indicative submission for 22-23. So with the big caveats that we don't actually yet have certainty that funding will exist next year, but the Welsh Government is certainly proceeding with some pace and some passion about town centre and high street regeneration. So I've every reason to believe it will. But we thought it was useful both for members and communities to see what the longer term plan is, but also for officers just to get that clear forward plan, really. It also sets out a bit more clearly how the money will be spread out, because clearly, as you can understand, we can't fund sort of an equal amount in every town. That just isn't how the projects work. We have to make sure they're deliverable within the financial year. And also the ideas have come from various stakeholder engagement meetings, most specifically the Reopening Towns reviews, to think about ideas of what could be made permanent or what future opportunities there are. So in Appendix 3, we set out the indicative proposal for the following year as well, which assumes that we get that money. In terms of this meeting, part of the sequencing was intended to be that you consider the Borough Theatre first, because one of the suggestions is that from this year's funding, £250,000 goes towards the Borough Theatre. So you might want to comment further on that when you consider the other paper in a few minutes. So that's the first part of the paper. The second part and the second recommendation that Cabinet's been asked to consider is that we put in place experimental traffic orders, which will allow us to keep the temporary trial measures in place for up to another 18 months. So the works that are in place at the moment, which are listed in paragraph 3.11, they have been done under emergency orders and they last for 18 months, so they expire in January. So although we've got a little bit more time to think about it, the outdoor cafe licenses and those kind of things were deliberately scheduled to run until September. So we're now in the position of needing to think about whether they're renewed or come to an end. So we're trying to line it all up together really and get a decent view of how things can proceed. As I said, it is up to 18 months. So if things change in the interim, or if the feedback is that things aren't working, then they can be pulled at any time during that period. And in response to any feedback, we'd be speaking to the ward member and the relevant cabinet member or members. It would probably be both regeneration and infrastructure in reality that would need to brief before any decisions are made on amending or pulling any measures. But that opportunity remains. So we keep that system going in the same way as happened in the last year and a bit. Is the suggestion. So it doesn't mean that everything's there unchanged for the next 18 months, or sorry, for 18 months from January, but it does give us that opportunity. And during that time, we'll be designing up ideas for permanent changes and then engaging businesses and communities on those ideas. It may well be that the feedback comes back and members subsequently decide that the town should return to how they used to be, in which case that's fine, that can be done. It might be that there's a permanent solution agreed, or it might be something different. During the extended time period, we'll be able to continue tweaking and changing measures. So I know in Chepstow in particular, there's some other suggestions that have been made which would improve things like the access up the high street at the moment, without being too specific about different towns. But at the moment in Chepstow, it's probably, I would suggest, the least successful of the measures at the moment, because the high street's still open for people with blue badges seeking to access the Bank Street car parking. So it's kind of neither fully closed nor fully open. People with blue badges are finding they're getting abuse from members of the public for driving up there who think they shouldn't be. Other people are driving up there who shouldn't be. So there's different measures that we could trial to see if there's a solution to that. With different traffic flows that have been suggested by different parties. So there are opportunities for us to look at different things as well at the same time. It isn't saying the trials have to remain exactly the same. But overall, from the feedback meetings, they do seem to have been successful, and there's definitely opportunities to consider for permanent measures with consultation. So that's probably all I need to cover really, Chair. So Appendix 3 is probably the main one in terms of how the funding is proposed to be divided up, and the other main consideration is the experimental orders that mean we could keep the measures in place as temporary trial measures still for up for a further 18 months. There's a Wellbeing of Future Generations assessment accompanying this. At the moment, that assessment only looks at the extension to the temporary trials. But for the cabinet report, I've subsequently done one that looks at the actual funding itself, and I'm satisfied that we're meeting those equality objectives and social economic duty, so there's no issues in that regard. But really, it's just for your scrutiny then on those proposals and how you'd like us to proceed. As I mentioned, cabinet is next week, so I think, Chair, you've been invited to attend cabinet to pass on any feedback from this committee to that meeting.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much. You mentioned at the outset that it's a bid to Welsh Government for 554,000, which is part of the 791 that we're going to get. Do they have any say, or does Welsh Government have any say in, rather with regard to the indicative submissions that we've made in respect to the way in which it's going to be allocated?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chair. Yeah, my wording should have been slightly clearer there, but your question's still pertinent. The funding is secure, so it is a 1/10 equal share of the amount of money that's been allocated to the South East Wales Cardiff Capital Region. It's been administered by RCT, which is a process we've used before and has worked really well. But there is a couple of stages. So one is that we get member approval of what we're suggesting. There is a kind of a stage gate approval by Welsh Government just to make sure that they're happy the projects are going to deliver on the outcomes required and meet the T's and C's of the grants. And then there's sort of an overview by colleagues on a regional basis, because RCT is administering the grant, so they're sort of ultimately responsible for the T's and C's. So they just give it a quick check over and satisfy themselves. One thing that's worth mentioning on that note is that Welsh Government's clear for future funding. They're going to expect it to fit in with sort of wider strategies. And there's another bit of grant funding in there that you'll see where we've bid for money to develop in partnership with the Town Council in Chepstow an overarching strategy for the town, which will link in with their place plan and sort of tie all these things together. We've also put in a cheeky submission for Monmouth for the same thing, just in case there's spare money, which quite often happens to be the case. But given where we are in the financial year, we need a decision pretty quickly. And we suggest that if the funding exists next year, we'll put in a bid for Abergavenny. We already have those overarching strategies in place for Caldicot and for Usk. But we do need those documents in place really to make sure that the bids are informed in the future and fit in with wider agreed strategies in a documented way. So we don't want to miss the boat this year, but those documents will be important for next year. But the short answer to your question is, yeah, there is a kind of a stage gate where Welsh Government officials just check that the funding's being spent on the right things as per the grant T's and C's and delivers the outcomes that the grant is intended for. But we have an ongoing dialogue and a really positive relationship with those officers. So, you know, we're already having those discussions and we've got no cause for concern at the moment.
Unless anybody else has got a question at the moment, I've got another one, and that is, there seems, oh, Alan, Dave, Alan, you come in, I can't see a hand up for you. Alan, incidentally, Hazel, does the raised hand function operate at the moment? Because I can't see anybody's hands up. You just had to.
I haven't got a raised hand function, Chair.
Right. Okay, Alan, over to you.
Right, thank you, Chair. First of all,
excuse me a minute. Dave Baxter, could you put your camera off as you're not speaking? Thanks. Right, Alan, fire away.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I will declare a personal interest in the phase 2 of Church Road because I happen to live on Church Road, but I'm not going to talk specifically about that. Mark, you mentioned that the council were looking to take £250,000 of funding out of this available funding for the Borough Theatre. So my obvious question then is, how is that going to affect the projects that you've lined in the indicative proposal? What is that going to do in terms of time scales, or is it going to affect those proposals at all? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Davis. Borough Theatre's listed in Appendix, oh, sorry, it's Appendix 2, not Appendix 3. It's the third row down in the first table, so that £250,000 suggested allocation is already there. And unfortunately, with the sequencing of this discussion now, the intention was that you discuss that via Kath's report first, and then this would naturally flow afterwards. It doesn't affect any of the other proposals. You'll see for the 2022-2023 draft submission, we're suggesting that Church Road Caldicot goes in there. I know you said you're not sort of seeking to discuss the specifics necessarily, but just to clarify to the Select Committee, we are seeking and are right on the cusp of securing active travel funding for that route, which will be this financial year. So the suggestion is that we'd use the active travel funding this financial year, and the project would flow from the end of this financial year into next year. So active travel funding would be spent this year, and the MCC match funding that's required and the Transforming Towns money for next year would carry the project forwards. So both projects could happen, in short, both the Church Road and the Borough Theatre could happen, and the other projects listed in the table. Does that answer your question, Councillor Davis?
Yes, thanks, Mark. I mean, had we had these items in the right order, one of my questions would have been whether as a council, we consider the borough theatre to be essential for regeneration of town centres. But I think it's not having any effect on the funding, the other funding, as you say. So perhaps, you know, that's not a valid question anymore. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Alan. Jez, if you'd like to come in with your question. Jez Becker.
Thanks, Chair. Hello, Mark. Hope you had a good summer, everybody. Yeah, I think I'm being a bit thick. Probably my brain's baked from getting the kids off to school finally. I'm looking at it, and you know, we've got this 1/10 share of the placemaking grant, and you're talking about the 75k bid for Chepstow. Is that 75k bid out of that grant money then?
No, sorry, there's 3 different pots. There's which I've tried to set out in the report. So pot number 1 is the Transforming Towns Placemaking Grant, which is the 791k. So that's what's listed in Appendix 2. There's also a Transforming Towns Revenue Fund, which is where we put in the 75k for Chepstow's overarching strategy, where we'd seek to work with the town council and yourself and your colleagues as Chepstow county councillors. And there's actually a third pot, which is for a Transforming Towns Business Fund, where we've also put in some bids. So that latter bit is covered. Excuse me, I'm just scrolling up through my reports.
I get what you're saying, Mark. So essentially, Chepstow's not getting any of the placemaking grant.
No, it's getting. Well, we've bid for and we're waiting to hear on £75,000 for the overarching strategy, and then there's the items listed in Appendix 2, which are for Chepstow. So it's getting from both pots. In fact, from all 3 pots. Because there's a
I do welcome the idea of tying together the plans. There's a lot of disparate sort of ideas floating about. We do need to get a sort of combined feel on it. I don't mean to hog chair. I'll only be a second. The funding that's coming, you've got the interim problems that you've been saying about with the traffic up Chepstow. Not like we didn't see that coming. We have been saying that since we put in the scheme, and we've also been saying about the quality of the scheme that's gone in. We've now got wood falling off the bottom of those rubbish planters that I hated. We've got the steps of the memorial are actually coming away and are loose now and are an accident waiting to happen. Somebody's going to fall down there and sue us. And we have got the sight impairment bobbles at the crossings that were put in, which are already broken and smashed and have not been repaired. And we've got the crossings which we were told we would be getting some paint on, which have not been painted. So in terms of interim, you know, what we've done has come quite late in the day and is already falling to pieces. Where do we get the attention and funding to fix that?
Yeah, they're fair points. So I'm sorry to hear about the problems in Chepstow from your recent emails or previous emails, Councillor Becker. I guess there's a few things in the sequencing here. So if Cabinet approves that the interim measures stay in place for longer, then some of the things like what we've done in terms of the bobbles that Councillor Becker's mentioned in Chepstow it's like stick-on tactile paving. If that's going to be in place for up to another 18 months, then I suggest we seriously consider whether actually put in the proper tactile paving, so we overcome that problem. As a very short-term measure, the contractor's been asked to come back and address the very immediate issues. The steps on the memorial sounds like a separate maintenance issue that I'll pick up with colleagues and I'll make a note of now. The planters I wasn't aware of. That hasn't seemed to happen elsewhere, but we can go back and review the quality of those and get those repaired or replaced. And of course, Cabinet decides that they're not going to extend the measures, and we're withdrawing from the process. In which case, we wouldn't take those measures. The zebra crossing, we need to get a safety audit on, and so it's just being designed up at the moment. Get the safety audit, and we'll give you an update via email, Councillor Becker, on when that will be. But work is progressing on that. I think they're the points that you raised. Yeah, you're right. In terms of sort of other alternatives, this would give us scope to look at those and test them. Appreciate it's been a while since some of those are raised by yourself, but this will give us that opportunity to see if there's different measures that can work better. And I think that will be important in Chepstow before we can.
It's been a year actually since I put it in. To wait on this fund coming through to see any of that work done then, because the replacement of tarmac and the pavement will be done, and that obviously fell by the wayside as well. So I mean, are we waiting on the money to do that?
No, Chair, no, Councillor Becker. What I need for that decision is just Cabinet's decision on whether we extend the trial measures with the experimental orders, and when we have that certainty, we can go in with those improvements. The funding is
the
for
pavement improvements shouldn't actually require that. Yeah, additional measures should. What I want to ensure is that we're not waiting on these decisions to get things done that were already supposed to have been done.
No, the replacement of the tarmac with the paving isn't reliant on any list, isn't part of this paper. We've had that costed now, and we're just looking at sequencing of works, and that was going to be a separate conversation with yourself, which I'll pick up separately. But it's around.
I'm pleased to hear that it's not related to this, and I support what you're trying to do with the bids that you're putting through, Mark. So yeah.
Okay, I'll get in touch separately, Councillor
Chair.
Becker, about the sequencing of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jays. And now, Giles, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Morning, everyone. Yeah, a couple of questions, Mark. Firstly, the list in Appendix 2. I hope I haven't been asleep at the wheel, and missed some previous discussion. But it seems as if this is a little bit of a fait accompli, and I'm just wondering what other projects might have been put forward for consideration but didn't make this list. Second question, then, you've used deliverability as a marker, really, in terms of judging the success or the outcomes of those interventions. How do you propose to report that? And the last question, because I'm just reflecting on the comment you made about tying into existing strategies and what have you. Are we planning to sign up to the Placemaking Wales Charter, and do you see that being tied in with that as well? Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So in terms of the first question, I can see your point in terms of looking like a fait accompli. We've gone through a lot of work to identify suggested projects and work out what's deliverable, what isn't. So they came from primarily the review of the reopening town measures meetings with county councillors, town councils, or community council in Megas context, and Business Resilience Forum or Chamber of Commerce reps. It was a report to this committee previously, which I haven't appended, but that did go through a summary of those suggestions and findings. So that's the primary source of the ideas, as well as we hold a multidisciplinary officer workshop, and colleagues put forward all kinds of ideas. But in terms of this year in particular, it really is very driven by what can be delivered within the financial year, and there's no point in us putting down for funding something that we can't deliver, because then we'll have to repay the funding or not be able to claim it. So there is, I guess, there's limited scope for moving things around this year. Next year there is more scope. It is indicative because we're assuming first off that the funding exists and the grant conditions are the same. But if other ideas come up in the meantime, that should be replaced, and they can certainly be factored in or changed. So there's far more scope for next financial year. But I think I just need to be honest with you and just be realistic that we're already in September. We've got until March 31st to spend this, which is more challenging than it sounds. So I think this year is relatively tied down, to be honest, Councillor Councillor Howard. In terms of the placemaking charter, yes, that's a cabinet report for the 15th of September that will be published in the next day or two, and it is recommended to cabinet that we sign up to that charter. It does inform all of this in the sense that placemaking is sort of the wider thinking about how we're dealing with physical regeneration and all of those kind of projects. So yeah, it is relevant, but that's already, I guess, embedded into national planning policy and much of what we're doing anyway. But yeah, that is in the pipeline as well. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Howard? I'm thinking there may be a third one that I've missed.
There was one about measuring success, but I take the points you've made about the timescale and the deliverability of the schemes. But I also wanted to say, Chair, and I forgot, I think that the street scene in Abergavenny and Monmouth have looked particularly good. They're the two towns that I tend to frequent rather than those down in the south. So I think they've had a massive impact and made the town centres feel much more welcoming spaces, and there's been a little bit of vandalism here and there, which is very disappointing, but I think it's been a great result, so many thanks for that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, just following on from that, certainly so far as Abergavenny is concerned, the street scene is hugely improved from what it was previously, and I think it would be a retrograde step if we didn't follow through with these plans. The question I have now is that if other towns don't want to continue with the temporary arrangements, can there be a split? Say, can Monmouth and Abergavenny proceed with the amended regulations and other towns go back to what it was previously? That's the first question. Second question is, in Appendix 1, you've mentioned that placemaking interventions, residential units in town centres. Okay, have there actually been any applications for grants for conversion from retail to residential, or is that something to follow up at a later stage?
Okay, thanks, Chair. On the latter point, no, nothing yet, but that's because we haven't got these kind of grant criteria or opportunities out there yet. So once that's agreed by cabinet, things like the enveloping scheme and other bits, we'll be publicising that to seek take up. But there is a lead in time with that. There's separate work going on within the housing team to assess what opportunities are out there for residential uses in the town centre.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of any requests at the moment. But if that's a funding stream that we put forward, then we'll be actively promoting that. There are other funding streams as well along the same lines. In terms of a split decision,
if I just interrupt it, would those funds have to be made available by March the 31st next year, or not?
Yeah, for the year one bid, but that's something we could include in the 2022-2023 bids. And again, that's part of our rationale for putting in a 2-year programme, because some of those have a long lead-in time. So if this is agreed and we believe we will have the money, we can start that sort of marketing / awareness campaign so that people have a chance to put bids together and come in with their proposals that we can support. That is one of the challenges we always have with funding when it's on a year-by-year basis, which almost all of the funding seems to be. So we're taking a bit of a measured gamble, really, that it will exist next year, and we can start thinking in a longer term way.
And once this has been approved by cabinet on the 15th, I mean, do we advertise to the general business community that these grants are going to become available?
Yeah, we'll be doing some targeted awareness and marketing to, so if there's an enveloping scheme in a particular town, we'll make sure that that's publicised in that area to make sure it can happen. So one of the proposals for 21-22 is the external improvement grants in Chepstow, in Caldecott. That carries on a project that's been happening this year, and it's one of those things that gathers a bit of momentum. So there's about 4 or 5 properties on the go at the moment, and that in itself is gathering some interest from others. So this gives them that chance to carry on. So one of the rows, I think it's about the 4th or 5th row, 5th or 6th row, got shopfront improvements. Yeah, we'll be out there promoting that, and then doing the same with the other bits in other towns as applicable. In answer to your first question about could it be a split decision by cabinet, the short answer is yeah, it could be. It might be the cabinet wants to proceed but thinks we need to, I don't know, consult in communities somehow and see if the trial measure should remain. But yeah, we could have the decision to retain them in Abergavenny and Monmouth, for example, and take them out in other places. You'll already be aware that we've taken out the traffic lights in Us because they weren't working effectively anymore. So yeah, that decision can be made either at the outset or later on in the 18-month period if the need arises.
Okay. Thanks. Another question I have, just looking at the figures, in the indicative submission for the Borough Theatre refurbishment of 250,000, it's a pity we didn't have the report on the Borough Theatre earlier, because they're mentioning 175,000.
I think that's potentially a different component of the grant.
Well, I'll ask when the next paper comes before us.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I think I do know why that is. It's because of the 250 grand that's in the table in my report, 30% of that is match funding. So it's a 175k grant and 75k match funding split. So in the Borough Theatre report, the 75k match funding is batched in with the rest of the match funding.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense now.
Sorry, Chair, yeah, if I can come in. Morning, everybody. Yeah, Mark is right. So the £250,000 is made up of the 70-30 split. So ultimately the 175 that we're asking for is 100% match towards what the Transforming Towns element of the grant's putting in.
Right,
okay, thank you.
That's clear now. Thanks very much. Well, members, if we don't have any further questions on this report, anybody else want to come in at this stage? No? Well, thank you in that case, Mark. Thank you for your report, and I'll be seeing you on the 15th of September, the Cabinet meeting.
Okay, thanks all. Thanks, members.
If not before.
I'll pick up Councillor Becker's other comments separately. Thanks all.
Great, thank you very much. Right, members, I don't, Hazel, do you know if Kath Fallon is with us yet? No. Dave Baxter?
Yeah, she isn't, Chair. She's having, I've just had tech messages, so I'm really sorry about it. Basically, her computer seems to have melted and having real problems with Teams. So I think probably walk you through the paper and ask any questions, and hopefully Kath will join us as we go.
Okay, over to you.
So the paper, obviously the paper is to look at the proposed investment for the Borough Theatre and it remaining fit for purpose. So without me doing kind of the, because I'm assuming everyone's kind of looked at it, with the theatre coming back to the local authority, it was in kind of quite poor repair and much to be done, and then been a lot of discussion about the refurbishment of it, which then started, and Arts Council Wales put in money to start the process. So plans were developed, and one of the kind of key issues, I think, was one of access, of the fact that patrons with any kind of mobility issues can't get from front to back of house, and the corridors. So the design looked at putting in flat access, and so you've got that freedom of movement from front to back, and it becomes a lot more of an accessible venue. As that process developed, then it became clear that the heating and cooling to the theatre was sort of time served and not very good, and actually didn't meet current standards because it didn't bring any fresh air in. So money was identified from the kind of facilities team to renew that. So there was a certain amount of what started off as a simple kind of refurbishment developed. So I think we then developed quite comprehensive plans in a very challenging space, and one of the decisions made that the current seating was totally life expired. There was a lot of customer feedback about the lack of leg room, and obviously it had these humps that prevented kind of front to back flat space and things like that. So as part of the kind of initial works, we removed the old seating because it would have to go anyway, which also then revealed the heating ducts and things which were going to be replaced and removed and things. As the process then, when we then were able to do proper surveys of the space, which uncovered a few surprises in terms of the levelling, and so then the plans in terms of the floor had to slightly change to allow for that. So we then were at the position where we went to market for a principal contractor, at which point all the costs for building work went up considerably, and obviously we've identified the funding shortfall. So in table 3 below, which looks at the options, you then are faced with, well, you could mothball the theatre, which is a loss of a cultural venue in the town. Effectively, it's a loss of the funding secured to date for that, and any kind of professional arts programme in North Monmouthshire. There was a kind of that option, well, we can make it safe as it is to an extent, at a lower cost, but effectively you've then got a community hall. You've not got a venue that can sustain any kind of professional programme or an active programme to manage the venue, and also how sustainable that is, and you kind of have another empty space. We considered, could you phase the work, and the issues there are that actually, in order for the theatre to generate money to drive what it needs to drive, and to present a facility for kind of local and community groups, emerging artists and visiting companies, to attract visitors to Abergavenny and do that, you kind of need it all in one go. You can't do it bit by bit and have a safe and appropriate venue. So obviously our preferred option is identify the funding and proceed. So this is where we're at in terms of the funding to be confirmed, and there is a shortfall of still of 278,943, and that's left. We're in discussions with how Abergavenny Town Council can help us. We're going to Cabinet on the 15th, and then to full council. Why have the costs increased, delays incurred? Well, when we originally started the project, which was at the same time as the Town Hall Hub, we thought we could phase more, and initially we're looking at not including the bar area. The preparatory works and the lessons from the Hub project about the kind of the difficulties of the Town Hall as a listed building have done that. Mitigating some of the impacts of the Town Hall refurbishment, which it's been fantastic, but it's kind of thinking how that goes in. But obviously the main one was worldwide pandemic, Suez Canal issue, and the knock-on effect on local supply chains. So that's where we are on that. I think probably easiest if I go on to questions actually and talk through it. Otherwise, I'm just kind of reading a paper to you all, which is probably not that useful.
Right. Thanks, Dave. We've got a question from Giles Howard. Giles, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not really a question. It's more a comment, and I think I reflect on the fact that the theatre is too small to be able to operate on a commercial basis, and that's putting aside all the issues with COVID that have affected the arts industry as a whole. And I think really we've got two stark choices. We either do the theatre properly or we don't do it at all. As an Abergavenny area member, there is only one option, And I think even those who haven't got an interest in theatre or the arts would still recognise its massive value to the town and hinterland. So I don't have any questions. I think it's a shame that the prices have varied to cause us a problem, but the theatre's been crying out for this development for years. And you know, as a cabinet member, for leisure and culture, probably 8 or 9 years ago, and I had a lot of discussions with setting up the trust at the time, and with the chairman. That was a big effort. So I recognise just how important the theatre is, and I really want to see brought back up to the standard it ought to be, and hosting shows and events. And so it isn't a question really, just a comment, and I'd like to see the work done and the theatre put back to where it ought to be. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Giles. Jez, you'd like to come in there? And then after Jez, we got Alan Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of sympathy for this. It sounds like what happens to me every time I do DIY. You know, I go to change a light bulb and I end up building an extension. The only thing that I in agreement with Giles that, you know, if we're not doing it for the arts, what are we doing it for? Because that's the focus of our communities. We do need those buildings in our communities. So, you know, if we are faced with that, I don't do it, you know, then let's do it. Let's do it properly. I am interested though in how much did the costs go up? You're saying about we went out to private construction contractor and the costs hiked up. I don't know who we.
So we went out to market for the principal contractor. So there were some elements of it that we kind of were sort of value added. So it was a case of, look, whilst we're doing this, it would be good to do it. So little things like, you know, runs for cables and things like that, but also actually, well, it's value added, but if all those things are really knocking it up, then we could take that. So obviously we had from the estates team quantity surveyor who costed it out where we thought it would come in, and it was sort of in place. So we went to market. The quote select, you know, the principal contractor selected was the best bid, but it was also the lowest bid. So, you know, so it was a competitive process, and it's in line of, I mean, the art centre there's an art centre out in West Wales which went for exactly the same thing. They were doing a capital project, and the costs doubled. You know, if I could do it myself as DIY, I would. It is what it is. But I absolutely agree with you both that if you're going to do it, you want to do it right. Appreciate, you know, it's public money, and it's what I hope is an investment, because the theatre, as well as being a resource for the local community, I passionately believe is a driver not just for culture, but for opportunities for education, for social cohesion, for kind of business development. You know, it will be a fantastic resource for all these things, but obviously we're at the painful bit. Yeah, I'm paying for it.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get out there. It is that disparity between the quantity surveyor and you know, the market that worries me. I often feel that any kind of government related thing, local government, you know, it's like a wedding. They see you coming and jack it up by 10. Oh, a factor of 10, you know, that's what concerns me, is are we falling prey to some sort of effect of that, which is being then gone, oh, well, it's the pandemic and the Suez crisis. No, it's not. It's just, you know, profiteering.
I sympathise with that. I genuinely, my instinct is it's not. I can see that, because just looking at the wider and also the discussion with the external architects and sort of colleagues on other projects, that this is, you know, this isn't unusual. I think actually one of the worries that, you know, that some of the team had was actually that we wouldn't get enough tenders, and we had 4, I believe, maybe 5 tenders. But you know, there are areas of the country where they're struggling to find quotes. I don't, you know, we read about in the papers the shortage of labour and things like that. I don't know. I don't know what that is, but I know what you're saying, Councillor Becker. I think we are kind of being offered a fair price. They've agreed to hold it till the end of September, which is beyond beyond what they would have to hold it, but we said, look, we've got to go back. So yeah, I think we are getting a good deal. I think it is a fair price.
Well, thanks, Dave, and thanks for stepping into the breach as well. So.
Well, no, it's terrifyingly my pleasure.
Alan Davis, you come in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. David, I visited the Borough Theatre some years ago, and I would agree with totally that it needs, it needs a lot of work. So, and I have no problem with these facilities being provided within communities. In fact, I'm sure Chepstow and Caldicot would welcome having the same sort of facilities, because we haven't got anything like that in our area. But I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. There's a substantial financial input from the council required to make this project work. Historically, looking at what's happened to these sort of buildings in the past, are you convinced, are you confident that in terms of sustainability and viability, that this isn't going to prove to be a white elephant for the council, in terms of this going to have to provide more and more finance as the years go by? Because clearly there are many priorities, and having a cultural centre like this it's a nice to have, but not necessarily a need to have. So, having carried out all this work, are you convinced that then, you know, the council will not need to plough more money in to keep this venue operational? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I think it will. Yeah, yes, I don't think it's going to be a white elephant, and I think absolutely it will be a resource for the whole of Monmouthshire. I think it's about being very careful with your cultural resources. One thing we recently promoted the Horrible Histories at Abergavenny Castle, because obviously we've got a theatre to put shows in at the moment, and I was looking at the postcode analysis on that, and I did the little Google map of where the audience come from, and there was a very big, you know, up the road. I've forgotten the number of the road, but you know, we were drawing people from the south of the county and along the heads of the valleys, and very much the venue should do that. I think the management of the venue within the A465, very much the management and direction of the theatre, it should be seen as a kind of strategic asset. So it's not just, it's very, very important for Abergavenny and a very brilliant resource for local groups, but it's also about the skills, and it needs to be beneficial to the whole county. And there's always there's three elements for a successful art centre that you've got to get right, the three kind of legs of the stool. So you've got the facilities itself, which obviously you want to be appropriate, they're contemporary, so that visiting companies can come in. There's been a lot of talk, actually there's something on Radio 4 about touring shows, obviously touring lots of big equipment and big speakers and things, and actually is if venues can have the equipment, you need to tour less, which is taking less stuff on the road and such like that. But it's equipment and the venue. Then the other kind of leg of the stool really is the staff and the skills and development of that. And in the case of the borough, it's about having a very skilled staff team, but also skilled volunteers as well. And then the third element is the kind of, on a dry level, it's calling it the data. On a bet, it's about the relationships, which is about the audience base, the links to the community, and that's not just audience, that's companies, other venues like the Melville, Dance Blast, and with those three things, then venues can have a real impact, and it's a challenge, and that obviously the places like the South Bank Centre is a national venue for the UK, and do they do enough? Wales Millennium Centre is obviously based in Cardiff, that's a national venue. Does that enough? And so I suppose on a smaller scale, it's kind of how do we as Abergavenny, as a venue based in Abergavenny, benefit, you know, the whole geographic area? And I think it's about having those resources. Hope that made sense. This.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Sheila Woodhouse. Sheila.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to speak, because I'm not a member of this committee, but as a local member in Abergavenny, I wanted to make a few observations. But first of all, I have to declare a personal interest as a member of an amateur society that hires the theatre. So I just want to make that clear. Dave, you give given a very good presentation there. Thank you for that, because you said a lot of the things that I would like to put into words how I feel about the theatre, and you've described it about the educational benefits, about the benefits of the whole county. It brings in a lot of visitors. It's unfortunate that costs have escalated, very unfortunate, but it is vitally important that this refurbishment goes ahead. I've been thinking about the past of the theatre. It's been in constant use for over 100 years. We've got the oldest pantomime society in Wales using it. In wartime, I don't remember this, but I was told it was used by an amateur dramatic company for rehearsals, which included many servicemen based in the area, among them Richard Todd, Clive Dunn. In the 60s, we had a lot of famous people visiting: Lulu, the Beatles, Pink Floyd. I could go on. Tom Jones, known then as Tommy Scott and the Senators, John Barrett, and many, many others. But now we're looking at the future of it, and it is a key venue for things like the food festival. Frequent users are, as we all know, the Dramatic Society that I'm involved with, both as juniors and seniors, Abergavenny Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society, pantomime I've already mentioned, the Abergavenny History Society, the Borough Band. It's used for local charity concerts. The mayors have used it for charity concerts. Elvis has used it to raise money. That's just to name a few. We have lots of visitors. Owen Money, the late Rodney Bewes performed there, the Quarrymen, Yola Williams, Sue Pollard. The theatre has been absolutely such a treasure, so highly thought of by people far and wide. And we also have, and you touched on it, Dave, our dedicated group of volunteers. They can't wait to get back there. They put their whole heart into looking after the visitors to the theatre. Primary schools have used it for concerts. I hope this gives some idea of not just the theatre's past history, but the will and the desire for it to be brought back into use by not only local people, but everybody. It's a theatre for everybody. And it brings an awful lot of business into the town. People come, they have a meal out, they come back to visit the town, they walk through the park and they walk through the town centre, and oh, this is lovely, I'll come back again to shop. It does really put us on the map. So I thank you for your time this morning, and I hope that we can do something to save our theatre.
Thanks, Sheila. Brian Strong, I think you've indicated that you want to say something.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just that there's a resource still to be determined of 279,000 almost, and there is a meeting, I think, next week with Abergavenny Town Council. Is this to discuss that shortfall, or is there anything else on the agenda?
Yes, I mean, we're not asking them for the whole lot. I think Kath is going to pick this up because her computer's finally let her in.
Good morning all. Many apologies. Our internet has crashed. Thank you to my mum for letting me use her internet at the moment. Yes, the conversation that we have with the Town Council on the 15th of September is actually to discuss, obviously, the extension to the refurbishment programme that David has walked you through already, but also to discuss any potential support they may consider giving us in terms of how we address that shortfall that we're looking at the moment. So yes, Councillor Strong, that's why we're going.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. The $54,000 question is, if the Town Council don't
Can you see my hand?
Yes, I can. Just 2 seconds, Maureen. I can see your hand. If the Town Council don't come up with a solution to this shortfall of 278,000, where do we go next?
We are looking at an option through the Public Works Board and through the option for a loan to undertake some loan funding. So we would hope that we can get some support with the shortfall, but that is an option for us to look at. So but we would really sort of very much hope that the Town Council as a stakeholder will sort of join us in supporting us.
Right, thanks. Maureen, if you'd like to come in now.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, I mean, I would support this wholeheartedly, because so many other places have been envious of us, of this theatre, and to see it go would be such a very sad day. It's heartbreaking that the costs have to go up, but unfortunately this is this day and age, and this happens. I hear what you say about getting a loan, and I think, you know, it'd be awful shame if we lost this development because we didn't get enough money. It's used so much, and with the schools performing there as well. And I'm quite interested to see the idea of having the seats going away and having a completely big room, because that means you can hold events when the theatre's not being used as a theatre. You can hold events like balls and dances and other things like that. So it's going to be used absolutely to its utmost. But saying that, it's never really been unused. It's always been pretty full, and there's always been something going on. I was just a little bit concerned that we're going to, you know, lose the orchestra areas, so that we won't be able to have big orchestras. But I'm sure there'd be some way, if that did happen, of getting around it, not putting quite so many seats out. So I hope that would be the case. But I wholeheartedly support it, and Sheila said most of the things I wanted to say anyway. But I think it's a very precious item for us, and I hope that everything can go ahead and we'll soon be back to enjoying our theatre again. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks. I think Mark has indicated in the chat box that he may have something relevant to say concerning this. Mark, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was okay for me to come back in, but thanks for the invite. I was just thinking of Councillor Woodhouse's comments about the importance of the theatre to Abergavenny's identity, really, and that links directly to the point Councillor Howard made under the last item, or his question about the placemaking charter. So, you know, thinking about the appeal of a town and what is its unique identity and culture is a key part of that placemaking approach. So it links in with that, as well as thinking of, you know, the future of our town centres and our high streets as they very much change, you know, not just post-COVID, but, you know, with internet shopping anyway. So as Councillor Woodhouse mentioned, the existing appeal of, you know, an evening in the theatre and a pre-theatre meal or post-theatre drinks or whatever could really be a significant part of Abergavenny's sort of economic bonus and its sort of cultural appeal. So really help it thrive. So it was just that contribution, really. The whole discussion this morning really ties in really neatly.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, there's clearly synergy between this report and the report of the Borough Theatre and your report. If we don't have any further questions, Lisa Dimmock, Councillor Lisa Dimmock, if you'd like to come in there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for letting me attend. Can I just thank all members for your comments that you've made today. Obviously, I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing and Social Justice, so this falls within my portfolio. Dave, you've done a fantastic job today presenting that report. Well done. I know you were slightly nervous, but I've told you you've done a lot more difficult meetings compared to today. Taken on board members' comments. Obviously, this is a huge asset to Abergavenny. When I've been visiting Abergavenny on my rounds of the county, I've been stopped when I've been in a supermarket telling my partner I'm just leaving. I've just visited the borough centre. I've then been accosted in shops asking, is it going to reopen? When is it going to be reopened? I think for local people, they're incredibly passionate about it. So I think we have to deliver this, but it's also the people that are visiting Monmouthshire. It's an amazing building, you know, you can't help but fall in love with it, and I think Dave is a fantastic asset to it as well. And like he said, good management of something like this is key. The staff there, the skilled staff that love that building as well, and also the relationships, the user groups and the wider community too. I know I want to thank Councillor Woodhouse and Councillor Tudor Thomas, who've been very supportive of this. We've organised tours for the user groups to share with them what was uncovered during the investigation works, and you know, to explain the reason why costs have increased, obviously along with building material costs. And we also ran a Q&A with the user groups as well. So I want to thank members today, and hopefully when this comes to full council, we can all get behind it and see this push through. So thank you ever so much, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa. I think Kath wants to come in and say some final words here.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. It was really just to build on sort of Councillor Powell's comments with regard to the orchestra pit. We have actually set up a task and finish group with our users to actually look at how we can look at different configurations for the orchestra. So that's something we'll be doing with the design team over the next month or so. I also wanted to thank Cabinet Member Dimmock as well, really, in terms of her support that she's given us, particularly in terms of how we move forward with our relationships with our stakeholder group and our user groups. We certainly are very keen to perpetuate that relationship and to work closely with them as we move forward in terms of the extensive programme that we'll be looking to put on once we've completed the works. And finally, a big thank you today, particularly for stepping in today, but also particularly for all the hard work for the team. It's been very difficult for them whilst the theatre's been shut, but they carry on in fairness, and they're doing a grand job, and also in terms of our box office staff, our technicians, all our back office staff that are really so well led by Dave, but really the commitment that they show is second to none. So a big thank you to me. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kath. There are no further questions on this, members, and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Economy Development Select Committee Forward Work Plan, which I'll take as read, unless I've got any comments on that. And then agenda number 8, we've got the Council and Cabinet Work Planner, again, which I'll take as read, unless I've got any questions. And then 9.1, we can go to the minutes, confirm the Economy Development Select Committee minutes of the 15th of July 2021, and also the special meeting of the 26th of July 2021. Do we have a proposer and seconder for that?
Move, Chair.
Thank you. And the seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you. So the next meeting will in fact be on the 16th of September, where we will deal with the economy development, employment and skills, and scrutinise the progress of the employment skills and apprenticeship program. To presentations. So unless members have any further questions, I'll bring the meeting to an end. But remember, both these reports will come to Cabinet on the 15th of September, and I'll be presenting them at the Cabinet meetings, and I'm sure that we'll have full support when it comes to full council at the end of the month. So thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Chair. Bye all.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Paul.